Our next guest played quarterback for Notre Dame. He played quarterback in the NFL. We hung out with him in Dublin a few years back, and he was the best-looking guy in the country. Here's Brady Quinn.
Thank you. Shake around here. See, how you doing, sir? Good to see you again. What up, brother? Chrissy, Marv, how we doing? How we doing?
Very
Good.
crisp handshake there.
Very.
Right there. We were just talking about this, that like DAP. Like I'm a DAP guy. I don't need a handshake. You know, do you think the commissioner had a tutorial prior to his first draft to understand how to shake hands with draft picks?
I actually was Roger Goodell's first draft. So I can go back and recount the fact that being how long I was in the green room, and I think his excitement to get me and my family out of his green room probably was part of the reason why we hugged. But it was more than a dap. But I don't think anyone gave him a tutorial. I think he's just got it in him.
But he gets a little too into it.
Well, it's a big moment for a lot of people there. You know, again, for our family and for me, I mean, it was a long time building up to that moment, but I got drafted by the team that I rooted for growing up. And all that Chipotle that we had ordered during that 5.5-hour stint or whatever it was magically whisked out of his green room.
Okay, but when you're sitting there, if a guy who's going to be drafted in the first round says, I want to bring my girlfriend,
yeah,
what would you say?
As the commissioner or?
No, you, from experience.
Oh, I mean, again, we all knew what we signed up for, whether it was my girlfriend or my parents and everyone else. I think what I would do is I would ask them, does that individual believe their girlfriend's strong enough or their family's strong enough to be able to handle the camera, the pressure, lights, everything else? Because up until that moment, really, they have only experienced things through you. They haven't been there right with you in the spotlight. And I think that's one of the things that I wasn't really thinking about when you're thinking about going to the NFL draft. You're just thinking about your dream coming true and getting to play in the NFL. You're not thinking you're going to be sitting there for 5.5 hours or whatever it was. And you're also not thinking about how your family's going to handle that pressure. I mean, you're prepared for it. You've handled a lot of other things in your life up to that point, but that's a very different set of circumstances for your family to deal with.
And trying to figure out who's telling you the truth during the draft process.
Well, and that was part of my reaction, I think, to a number of the picks based on what I was told. You know, we were told something that by Phil Savage that was completely truthful. He's like, hey, if you and Joe are there at number 3, we're going to take Joe Thomas. And my agent, Tom Conn, at the time told me the night before, he goes, I've never had a general manager tell me that before a draft. He goes, most times they say things like that as a smokescreen. He goes, in this case, they were truthful. And so when that pick came through, I already had an idea in my head. And to Phil's credit, Phil said that because he knew how much it meant to me to be drafted by the Browns. And so I was kind of prepared for it. But some of the other picks, I had an idea, but the Miami one was the most surprising. So that was probably more why I reacted in the way I did, because I was really curious to see who they're going to go with instead.
Well, what happened with Miami?
They had sent, again, this is coming from what I had heard from Charlie Weiss. You have to ask him, but they had sent him a package and all this stuff that supposedly said, we know you haven't been a big fan in the past, given that they were division rivals, but hope you will after the draft the next day, which I don't think he was a fan at all after what happened the next day. So, that led us to believe that it was going to be Miami. Terry Shea, their quarterback's coach, he had actually been with me in Arizona training and preparing for my pro day, for the draft and all of that. He left to go take the quarterback coach job. So I'm thinking okay, if he has any say, he's seen my work ethic, he's seen me, he'll be on my side on all this. And they decided to go in a different direction. And that was, in the end, I think they were 1-15 or whatever that season, but it was what it was.
Take that.
Yeah. I meant to mention this before I come on because it's Super Bowl week. I just came from Radio Row, and you know how this goes. I'm going to thank Travis Matthews because I'm here on behalf of Travis Matthews. They've outfitted me. Nike, Delta, who brought me here, Uber, do you ever notice that? I feel like every interview, they're like a walking NASCAR, and everyone's selling something to you.
Yes.
Or it's a cause. They're like, hey, save the whales. Can we make sure that we may draw awareness to saving whales?
How would you? We're talking to Brady Quinn. He's for sale, by the way.
That's right. I've got a couple spots here, patches. I don't want to cover the Travis Matthews stuff, but yeah.
Part of Big Noon Kickoff and host of Two Pros and a Cup of Joe, the radio show that precedes ours on Fox Sports Radio. When a quarterback has less attempts, like Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, we've seen quarterbacks who were, paid a lot of money, But I don't know how you process that. Like Justin Herbert was able to throw the ball prior to Jim Harbaugh getting there, and they got to the playoffs.
Right.
Jalen Hurts is in a Super Bowl. Saquon comes in. He's really the focal point of the offense. In this pass-happy league, is it still a pass-happy league?
I think it is, although I think the league's always going to go through its ebbs and flows and adjusting. And I think one of the things that you've seen a lot of defensive coordinators do, and like the in vogue defensive coverage, like the shell coverage, you hear about this all the time. And reason why is because you're essentially playing with a lighter box. You're almost enticing or forcing teams to see if they'll run the football, right? I mean, we look at the salary cap, we look how the roster, how the money's allocated or spent, and oftentimes it hasn't been on the running back position. And it's in part because the game has become so much more of a passing game. And don't get me wrong, it is and always will be because of the rules, the protections quarterbacks are given, receivers for that matter too. But I think you're seeing a swing, at least in the momentum of saying, like, you got to be more balanced, and in part because your best player might be the guy who's behind the quarterback in Saquon Barkley, or it could be Derrick Henry in that case. Lamar had an unbelievable season. I think Derrick Henry helped out a little bit too. But by and large, I think you're starting to see that. Too many defenses are trying to adjust to this game now where there's so many big plays, there's so many things that are happening in the passing game that they're trying to keep it all in front of them, trying to disguise what they're doing pre-snap, make it muddied for the quarterback. When you drop back, you're saying, is that quarters? Is it quarter, half? What variation are they doing? A lot of times they can do a nice little disguise in how they play a match zone or even man out of it. So there's so many things that happen post-snap. It's making it harder on the quarterback. And so, again, it goes back to your ultimate task is trying to win. And if that's the case, how can you figure out a way of getting that quarterback to make mistakes, turnovers, and get him off the field? And oftentimes it's a lot of what these defenses are doing. So in doing that now, offenses have to realize they've got to adjust. You got to start working the ball to oftentimes some of the best players out there.
Can Jalen Hurts win in a shootout against Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah, I mean, the last time these two teams played, I thought he was arguably the best player in the field. That was kind of his coming-to-age moment where we all watched him like, wow. I mean, he might have been the best player out there.
But I don't know if we believe that that's who he truly is. He did have an unbelievable game.
You have to understand, I've watched this young man all of his time in Bama, then to Oklahoma, then to the NFL, and he's like machine learning, man. Like the more reps he gets, the better he gets, the better he gets. I think sometimes we take for granted that they've been going through some staff changes too in regards to the play caller and who. That's a relationship that it takes time to iron out. The personality of your play caller, the chemistry that you have with that play caller, and how they're going to react to when you make a mistake.
But why say he took the straitjacket off of me, talking about his coach? If you're the best reason, or you play like that, we can win. Why would the perception be the coach has a straitjacket, or Jalen Hurts thinks there's a straitjacket on him from his coach?
He may have said that for a number of reasons. It could be like maybe they're protecting him for injury-related issues. It could be, they don't want to show too many things if they feel like they can win with doing less. And obviously that doesn't happen in the playoffs very often, but in the regular season at times, you'll try to hide some stuff sometimes if you can. But,
it's just a weird comment.
Well, there's been a lot of weird comments that have come out from the Philadelphia Eagles this year. I mean, you had guys reading books on the sidelines.
Yeah.
Or at least looking at a book. I don't know how much you can read. You don't get a ton of time sometimes in between series and talking to your teammates and your coach. But at least A.J. Brown had a book that apparently the book sales are doing great. They're skyrocketing.
But let's say you're quarterback. You're watching a movie.
Yeah.
And, you're not watching plays. You're not. You're just watching a movie. But it's a movie that really gets you. In a moment, and
yeah.
Whatever, Taken, Shawshank Redemption.
Taken's the pump up movie,
you like it because he's going. Yes,
Really,
Todd, give your Liam Neeson.
I will hunt you down. I will find you, and I will kill you.
That was actually kind of scary.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You could be
the voice, though, not seeing you say it.
Okay.
The voice doesn't match.
But what would happen if you were watching a movie on the sidelines as opposed to reading a book?
I think first off, it's wild because I've never seen a player read a book on the sidelines before. Again, for a lot of different reasons. I've always wondered, have we gotten to the point where we allow players to listen to music or something to help a little bit too? I mean, you see guys do it in pregame all the time to help them kind of get in that mindset. Maybe that's more of a softer way of you're visually not necessarily distracted by a book or
Would
a movie
you have
screen.
a problem if your teammate is reading a book on the sidelines?
I don't think that'd be a good thing. I'd probably go talk to him and say, like, hey, man, what's up? If it's part of his routine, then you got to let some guys do what they do. I mean, there's a lot of guys who I've seen during my time when I played who had some interesting routings. And
give me the weirdest.
Weirdest?
You don't have to do a name.
Yeah. There was one player who he used to do this tapping sequence to get his mind right, but literally would tap different spots
On his
head, and supposedly that helped him lock in. Everyone's got their different thing. I mean,
guys throw up.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that, but that never struck me as odd. I understand the anxiousness or the nerves or excitement, and then sometimes you get a bad plate of pasta or something at the Marriott hotel where you're staying at. Shout out to Marriott, by the way, too, for helping me be here.
You're available.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, we're promoting everyone here this week.
If Saquon didn't win the MVP this year, I can't see a year where a running back is going to.
You have to have a historical season, right?
Only if he broke the record.
I would actually make more of an argument for why are we anointing the MVP before the season finale? And the only reason I bring that up, and I know everyone's going to make the case, well, hey, this has always been a regular season award. I get that, but the truth is we most oftentimes award it to teams who are in the playoff hunt. It's the best teams. We looked at Joe Burrow this year. Joe Burrow statistically should have been a lot more talked about in regards to the MVP race. Yeah. He had a phenomenal season. He was carrying that team. Defensively, they struggled. Obviously, they moved on from Lou. And yet, it was well, they're not a playoff team, so we can't give him the award. It's well, all right, well, what are we doing here? Why don't we just wait till the end of the season, see who wins the Super Bowl, and say, was the best player then Saquon Barkley? If they end up winning and he's on that team?
Well, how many MVPs do you think would have gone to different people if we used that concept?
I don't know. I'd have to go back and look through. I mean, I guess the easier question probably to research is how many went to players that didn't make the playoffs. I mean, is there a handful of guys?
Boy, not in the modern era, I don't think. But I remember when Andre Dawson won the MVP for the Cubs, they finished last.
See, baseball did it right.
They could have finished last without him, so it's not wow.
There's an element to it, how much did he help his team? And I get that.
Yeah, Paulie.
But doesn't that make an argument for the Super Bowl?
I have 2 MVPs in NFL history that did not qualify for the playoffs. Now, it's a long time ago, and there were fewer playoff teams. Who wants a shot at this?
Okay.
Really old school, before 1975.
Running back?
1 running back, 1 quarterback. You were a fan of both of them, Dan.
Yes, Mark.
O.J. Simpson?
O.J. Simpson.
I was going to say O.J.
1973.
But he broke the record that year.
Without making the playoffs.
Okay.
Wow.
And then quarterback?
Johnny Unitas, 1967.
Okay.
Dang. Yeah, but back then you had 2 teams that made made the playoffs, and they played each other in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Or there'd be the NFL and the AFL, back then.
But I think you get my point. When we're looking at how we're going about qualifying, what is the MVP? It's and honestly, this conversation kind of was drummed up by Cam and talking about would you trade your MVP for a Super Bowl? And his response was probably surprising to most. I mean, that's his perspective. That's how he feels. But it led me to think, well, all right, let's just look at, again, how we're determining who the MVP of the league is. Should we wait and make it after the season's all said and done?
So he could have lost that Super Bowl the way he played, or lost the MVP by the way he played in the Super Bowl.
Potentially, yeah.
Rich Gannon was an MVP. And he that was the year they lost to
on the
Tampa
tuck rule,
Bay.
right? Or no.
Was it Tampa when he was MVP, Marv? When they got blown
lost
out?
to Tampa,
okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So he might have lost it there as well.
Yeah.
How's the shoulder, by the way?
Well, I was going to say my attorney will be reaching out at some point. I know this is a few years back.
So are you still
Paulie tried to say there's a statute of limitations, but I don't think so. We've got a workman's comp issue that's going on here.
Did you hurt your shoulder throwing the ball in Arizona?
I cannot confirm that. My attorney has told me to not say anything on the show. So
you're soft.
I mean, I can at least get a Traeger grill out of it. I mean, isn't that the
all of a sudden the sponsor part isn't that bad? Right? It's hey, what if I just get a free grill?
You gotta put pressure on people. You gotta leverage things, right?
Okay.
Or tariffs. Gotta put tariffs on you to get something back in return.
If you can carry the Traeger grill, then I'll get you one.
Where is it?
Well, I'll have to get it for you.
Oh, okay. I thought you guys had one over here. You
we
guys
will
have one out
tomorrow.
Well, okay. Then
Wednesday and Thursday.
I mean, Fritzy, you invite me on a day. You don't have any grilling going on?
Yeah, it's kind of weak. I think it's later in the week. The Traeger grill's being
It's
fired
Wednesday
up.
and Thursday.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Really
Wednesday.
appreciate
Sorry
it.
about that.
King's Hawaiian on Friday.
There you go. By the way, thank you to King's Hawaiian also for providing.
Thanks for stopping by.
Always
great
good to
to
be
see you.
here. Yeah.
He's Brady Quinn, Fox Big Noon Kickoff. I always call it High Noon Kickoff. Why didn't you do High Noon and then get the sponsorship with High Noon Beverages?
It's a great question.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
2 pros and a cup of Joe. We'll be back after this.
Talk to Eric Shanks about it. You know, Shanksy will he'll tell you.